Everyone chuckled when the wealthy investor mocked the black waiter in Mandarin, but then the room fell silent when the waiter answered back in flawless Mandarin. "Look at that clown serving us," the woman sneered, pointing as if he were an object, not a man, her words dripping with cruelty, and laughter rippled across the Aurora Pavilion, the city's most exclusive dining club. Several American executives gave uneasy laughs, eager to please her, though none of them understood a single word she said. Marcus Reed, the waiter, poured the wine calmly, his face composed, yet behind that calm burned a quiet strength, the resilience of someone who had survived storms far greater than insults at a dinner table. The woman was Lien Wei, heiress to a vast technology empire, infamous for her arrogance and sharp tongue, and tonight she showed no restraint. "That one probably never even finished school," she said in Mandarin, savoring each syllable, "and here they call it progress to hire people like him. What a joke." She didn't know Marcus understood every single word. Marcus was no ordinary waiter. He spoke Mandarin as if he were born into it. He held a master's degree in East Asian Studies and had served 5 years as a cultural officer at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. Just a year before, he had been Dr. Marcus Reed, one of America's most respected experts in Asian diplomacy, until his career collapsed under false accusations of leaking documents. And though he was cleared, every door slammed shut, so now he wore a waiter's jacket instead of a tailored suit. Lien Wei's contempt only deepened with each sip of wine, mocking him in Mandarin and broken English, refusing to meet his eyes, treating him as if he were invisible. What she didn't know was that only months before, those same hands carrying a tray had signed agreements worth billions. While she flaunted her wealth in Shanghai, Marcus had helped shape international policy. "You Americans are pathetic," she spat in Mandarin, glancing at her glass. "Hiring people like him. Progress? Look at him, he can't even carry a tray without trembling." The executives forced weak smiles, trapped between discomfort and their desire to impress her, and yet none of them imagined that the quiet man before them was about to respond in a way that would change everything. Ethan Cole, head of the country's largest electronics import firm, tried to shift the talk toward business, but Lien Wei kept circling back to her target, the silent server. He didn't tremble from fear. His body quivered with contained rage, each barb etched deep into memory, every word another scar. His downfall had been orchestrated by Oliver Sterling, a spiteful colleague who planted forged papers branding him a spy. 7 months of probes, headlines screaming traitor, allies turning their backs. Until the damage was permanent, Sterling took the promotion that should have been his. When the bill arrived, Lien barked orders in clipped, exaggerated English, calling him the help, announcing to the room that she held the power at Waytech. Marcus almost wanted to laugh, because for years he had arranged her trade missions. She once called him the American who truly understands our world, yet now, in a black waiter's jacket, he was invisible. "What's wrong with Americans?" she taunted in Mandarin, a jeweled finger stabbing toward him. "You preach equality, but the truth is some are superior and others meant for menial work. Look at him. Probably crammed in a tiny apartment with a dozen relatives, children from different mothers. It's in their nature." The Americans shifted, uneasy, and Ethan murmured, "Maybe we should stick to the contract." But Lien laughed coldly. "Let me finish my sociological lesson. You need to know who you're dealing with." Marcus poured tea silently, his face unreadable, yet every insult sharpened his resolve. He was not simply enduring disgrace, he was preparing his response. Then Lien beckoned him closer, treating him like a dog she had summoned. "You," she said in clipped English, "what's your name?" She rolled it on her tongue, savoring it. "Have you ever even heard of China? Do you know where it is on a map?" The table froze. Someone had finally gone too far. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus answered evenly. Lien snorted, cruel amusement spilling out. "Cute, he knows where China is." Then she switched back to Mandarin. "Bet he's never left New York a day in his life." For the first time all evening, Marcus met her eyes, not with submission, not with fear, but with something that made her skin prickle: recognition, the calm before the storm. Underestimate the wrong person and it becomes the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. Later, alone in the staff rest area, Marcus pulled out his phone, his hands trembling faintly, but his mind was shockingly clear. He began typing a message that could change everything. The recipient was Dr. Henry Lin, his former professor at Westbridge University, now the director of the Global Institute for Asian Studies, one of the most respected Chinese American voices in New York. "Henry, I need a favor urgently," Marcus wrote. "I'm at the Aurora Pavilion downtown. The heiress of Weitek is making openly racist remarks in Mandarin, assuming nobody understands. I've recorded the entire exchange. Can we meet tomorrow?" The reply came in under 2 minutes. "Marcus, where have you been? Of course, let's meet. She's already under investigation back home for corruption and misconduct. This could be the evidence we need." For the first time in months, Marcus allowed himself a smile. Dr. Lin had no idea he was working as a waiter now, and his message Marcus simply called himself a witness. To his mentor, he was still a promising young diplomat with a brilliant future. When Marcus returned to the dining room, Lien Wei had doubled down. Her cruelty was no longer hidden. Her voice rose, mocking him in a sing-song imitation of broken English. "You know how to clear a table," she jeered in a high-pitched tone, "or are you just trained to carry plates like a little pet?" A heavy silence spread across the table. Even hardened businessmen who thrived on brutal negotiations looked uneasy, but none dared to oppose a woman whose family empire controlled billions. "I can clear the table perfectly well, ma'am," Marcus replied evenly, his calm poise cut sharply against her venom. "How adorable," she sneered with a brittle laugh. "He speaks well. Maybe he's not as stupid as he looks." Then turning to the men, she added, "See, when you keep these people in line, they eventually learn how to act." Then came her fatal misstep. She pulled out her phone and began recording in Mandarin. "Here I am at New York's most exclusive restaurant, showing how Americans train their black staff. Watch how obedient he stays when I speak with authority." Marcus lowered his head, quietly stacking plates, but every word seared into his memory, every second preserved as evidence. On camera, her cruelty only escalated. "In China, we know every race has its natural role. Black workers are useful for labor, but never for leadership or intellect. This is simple biology." That was the breaking point. Ethan Cole, the electronics magnate, stood abruptly. "Excuse me, I need to take a call." 2 others rose soon after. They had seen enough, yet Lien mistook their exit for support. "You see," she said smugly into the camera, "when you establish hierarchy, even Americans respect it. This server is the perfect example of social order. He knows his place." Marcus finished clearing the plates and stepped aside, outwardly respectful, yet inside his eyes gleamed with something she failed to notice, a patient razor-edged determination. For the next 20 minutes, she recorded every word of her own undoing. She boasted of racial superiority, mocking African Americans, lecturing her phone about her so-called theory of hierarchy. "You know America's problem," she declared with a sly grin. "You hand out too many rights to people who were meant to serve. This waiter probably thinks he deserves the same pay as educated people like us." That was the breaking point. Marcus quietly slipped his phone from his pocket and began recording her recording, capturing not only her words but the gleam of arrogance in her eyes, the cruel smirk curling her lips. In Mandarin she sneered, "People like you should be grateful for any work. When I studied in China they used to say, a barking dog never dies, but a silent dog never thinks either." Marcus kept his face still, his movements precise, but inside he was already assembling evidence, every insult another line in a statement, every cruel laugh turned into ammunition. She thought she was humiliating him, but in truth she was arming him for her own downfall. "I'll post this tomorrow," she announced proudly. "People back home will laugh at how Americans let these people work in respectable places." Marcus bowed slightly, hiding the spark in his eyes. She was right about one thing. Someone would find the video fascinating, but it would not be her audience. As she tucked her phone away, smug in her cruelty, Marcus returned to his duties, patient as a man who knew justice must be prepared like a careful recipe, slow, deliberate, precise. She never imagined every word she spoke was already the foundation of a scandal larger than herself. Then, emboldened by too much champagne, Lien pushed further. "You know what?" she slurred in Mandarin, glaring at Marcus. "I'm going to teach this boy a lesson about hierarchy." Switching to mocking English she snapped, "You dance like monkey, show us, make it funny." That was the moment Marcus Reed made his choice. He stopped clearing dishes, straightened his posture, and smiled with a calm sharpness that sliced the air. Ethan Cole nearly spilled his drink. "Madam Wei," Marcus said suddenly in flawless Mandarin, his voice steady, resonant, unmistakably educated, "I believe you've confused this fine establishment for a circus." The silence that followed was deafening. Her face paled. What did you just say?" she stammered in English, arrogance draining away. Marcus continued in polished Mandarin, his tone deliberate and refined. "I said it's strange when people mistake wealth for wisdom, privilege for dignity, and social status for human worth." Around the table jaws dropped. The Americans understood instantly. This was no ordinary waiter. His cadence, his precision, the effortless shifts of register marked him as a man who had lived and breathed the language for years. You speak Chinese," she whispered, disbelief trembling in her voice. Classical Mandarin, modern Mandarin, Cantonese, 3 regional dialects, Marcus replied evenly, before slipping into English, then French, then Japanese. "But you probably realized that sometime in the last 90 minutes. Her world cracked beneath her feet, every vile word she had spoken replaying not as power but as evidence. "It's impossible," she muttered, her confidence collapsing. "You're just a black American waiter." Marcus's eyes burned with clarity. "Yes," he said firmly, "I am a waiter, but I am also Dr. Marcus Reed, Ph.D. in Asian Studies, and I understand every single word you've spoken tonight. My research has always focused on Sino-American relations and the inner workings of Chinese business culture," Marcus said evenly, letting the weight of his words settle. "For 5 years, I served as a cultural attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. I coordinated trade delegations, advised on protocol, and published 17 academic papers on diplomatic practices." Ethan Cole nearly toppled his chair as he rose. "My God, you're Marcus Reed. I've read your essay on Chinese infrastructure investments. You vanished from diplomacy a year ago." Across the table, Lien Wei's hands began to tremble. Her confidence crumbled. "But why," she whispered, "why are you here, working as a waiter?" Marcus met her gaze with calm gravity. "Because life sometimes forces us into humility. I was falsely accused of espionage, later cleared completely, but by then every door in diplomacy had slammed shut. No university, no department, no think tank wanted my name, so I took this job to survive." He leaned forward slightly, his tone unwavering. "For 8 months I've endured people like you, whispering in Mandarin thinking I didn't understand, talking about my race, my intelligence, whole theories of hierarchy, philosophies of superiority built on nothing but nationality and skin color." Marcus pulled out his phone. Lien's face blanched. She already sensed what was coming. "You wouldn't dare," she muttered. His smile was calm, almost surgical. "Of course I did. Every insult, every display of prejudice, every arrogant phrase, including the video you recorded tonight, the one where you lecture about Chinese superiority and black inferiority, it's all preserved." Her humiliation was total, but Marcus wasn't finished. "In fact, Ms. Wei, we've met before, professionally. I coordinated 3 major Sino-American investment conferences where your company participated. We even shared 2 video calls in 2022. At that time I wore a suit. I spoke as an equal among ambassadors. Perhaps that's why you didn't recognize me tonight, standing here in uniform." Lien opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The realization crushed her. The man she had ridiculed wasn't just her equal. He was someone who had once helped shape her company's future. Marcus's voice now carried the natural authority of a man who had once commanded boardrooms. "You said people like me don't understand international politics. Yet I spent years negotiating trade deals between the United States and China, including agreements that directly benefited Weitech." The American executives sat stunned. They had watched in silence as one of the nation's foremost experts on Chinese affairs was degraded by ignorance. "And let's not forget," Marcus continued, "the theories you've shared tonight, about race, about intelligence. Tell me, what would the leadership in Beijing think of a Chinese businesswoman broadcasting claims of racial superiority while abroad, on American soil?" Her lips finally moved, desperation cracking her voice. "You can't release it. It would destroy me, my contracts, my standing, my family's trust. Marcus's tone softened, but his words cut deeper than any shout. Yes, it would, especially since your homeland has strict policies against citizens who bring shame to the nation overseas. Robert, still pale with disbelief, muttered, Lien, you've just humiliated one of America's leading experts on your own culture. Marcus lifted his phone calmly. I've already shared copies of the recordings with Dr. Henry Lin, director of the Global Institute for Asian Studies. Let's just say he was very interested. A notification flashed across the screen. Marcus, this is explosive. The consulate must be informed immediately. She may have just sparked a diplomatic incident. I've also forwarded everything to the Chinese Business Association here in the U.S., Marcus added. They take the conduct of their members abroad very seriously. Cold sweat formed on Lien's temples. Her empire relied on international contracts, and a scandal about racism could cost billions. Worse still, Beijing had no tolerance for citizens who embarrassed the nation overseas. Please, she whispered, arrogance gone. Please, you didn't know who I was. If I had been just another guest, would you have treated me the same? Marcus's reply was quiet but devastating. Does human dignity depend on a degree, on a bank account, or should it be the right of every person, no matter who they are? The restaurant manager, who had been observing in silence, stepped forward, his tone respectful. Mr. Reed, I had no idea about your past. From this day our policy changes. Marcus inclined his head politely. Thank you, but it isn't about me. It's about how people behave when they think no one is watching. Lien tried one final desperate move. Dr. Reed, perhaps we can come to some kind of arrangement. Marcus smiled, but it was the kind of smile that cut deeper than anger. For 8 months I've endured comments from people like you, every insult recorded, every prejudice documented. I don't want money and I don't want favors. My only wish is that you leave knowing you were intellectually dismantled by the very black American you called worthless, and that you never forget this lesson. Her legs trembled as she stood, panic replacing pride. She knew that once those videos reached Beijing and Washington her career would collapse. Marcus remained steady and dignified, showing that true strength comes not from wealth or status but from character. As she left the restaurant, burdened by her greatest humiliation, one question lingered in the air. Could someone so poisoned by prejudice ever change, or must arrogance always collapse under its own weight? 3 months later the fallout was complete. Global Finance Daily reported, heiress loses $800 million in contracts after racist videos leak. The Chinese consulate issued a statement distancing itself from her behavior. Weitek lost 70% of its U.S. contracts in just 2 weeks. During a tense video call, her uncle's words in Mandarin were final. The family has decided you need time to reflect. Your executive privileges are suspended indefinitely. The woman who had arrived in New York as untouchable royalty returned home as a corporate pariah. Meanwhile, Marcus Reed had become an international phenomenon. The video of the confrontation went viral, surpassing 50 million views. Universities in 3 countries invited him to lecture on cross-cultural diplomacy. His story transformed from humiliation into vindication, a reminder that dignity once reclaimed can echo louder than prejudice ever could. The State Department eventually offered Marcus his old position back, this time with a promotion and a 60% raise. It was never about revenge, he told a reporter. It was about proving that human dignity has no price, and that wisdom can rise from the most unexpected places. He accepted the diplomatic post, but chose to remain at the Aurora Pavilion 1 day each week as a senior advisor and minority partner. What had once been an exclusive restaurant became a landmark, a place where activists, students, and visitors from around the world came to stand where a so-called waiter had taught a billionaire the meaning of humility. The ripple effect gave birth to the Marcus Reed Protocol, a set of zero-tolerance policies against discrimination in international business and hospitality. As for Lien Wei, her desperate apology video only worsened her fate. I apologize for my regrettable remarks, she stammered, but social media wasn't forgiving. Comments flooded in, not sorry, just racist, she regrets being caught, not what she said. 6 months later, at a corporate diversity summit, Ethan Cole shook Marcus's hand. You taught us all that underestimating people is the greatest mistake in business. Marcus smiled gently. Meanwhile, Lien lived in seclusion in Shanghai. Contracts dissolved, friends vanished, her reputation in ashes, the most expensive lesson a billionaire had ever learned, that money cannot buy dignity, and prejudice always carries consequences. If this story of dignity, justice, and resilience moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and tell us, what would you do if you witnessed something like this? Together, we can remind the world that respect is not a privilege, it's a right.